Good morning. It is Wednesday, January the 23rd, and this is The Drill. And thank you very much. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States of America today, because I'm the only one that makes the presumption for the status quo. Once upon a time, the teacher of Moses called upon mankind with a warning. At a certain date, he said, all the water in the world which had not been specially hoarded would disappear. It would then be renewed with different water, which would drive men mad. Only one man listened to the meaning of this advice. He collected water and went to a secure place where he stored it, and waited for the water to change its character. On the appointed date, the stream stopped running, the wells went dry, and the man who had listened, seeing this happening, went to his retreat and drank his preserved water. When he saw from his security the waterfalls again beginning to flow, the man descended among the other sons of men. He found that they were thinking and talking in an entirely different way from before, yet they had no memory of what had happened, nor of having been warned. When he tried to talk to them, he realized that they thought he was mad, and they showed hostility or compassion, not understanding. At first he drank none of the new water, but went back to his concealment to draw on his supplies every day. Finally, however, he took the decision to drink the new water because he could not bear the loneliness of living, behaving, and thinking in a different way from everyone else. He drank the new water and became like the rest. Then he forgot all about his own store of special water, and his fellows began to look upon him as a madman who had miraculously been restored to sanity. And it's called the changing of the waters. There's a similar story called the parable of the king and the poisoned well, in which a king has the well in the kingdom poisoned by a wizard who wants to see the king overthrown. And everybody drinks of the well except for the king, and everybody in the kingdom thinks that the king is mad, and they start making preparations to go ahead and storm the castle and overthrow him. And then one night, in the middle of the night, he sneaks down and drinks the water, and the next day the whole kingdom rejoices that the king had finally seen the light. But these stories are important because this is the nature of the struggle that we have going in this country today. It's not political. It is psychological. It is about sanity. So ESPN, ABC News are playing up the situation over the weekend with the Rams and the Saints. I think that was on Saturday. And so where there was a pass interference call that was missed, allegedly. And there seems to be some kind of controversy. So it's been going on and on. It's now Wednesday, and this incident happened on Saturday. And what's interesting is the emphasis on this, that this seems to be emphasized more than the accomplishments of the athletes themselves, what it is that they did to prepare to get to the Super Bowl, all the hard work and studying and whatnot. That all goes by the wayside, and all the emphasis is on the mistake made by the referees. And what's clear here is that what it is that ESPN and ABC News are trying to get across to people is that the only way to succeed in life is one of three ways: to either cheat, get lucky, or a combination of the two. And clearly what ABC News and ESPN are saying right now is that the only reason that the Rams have been successful is because they have cheated and gotten away with it, i.e. gotten lucky. So actually a combination of the two. But it's not so much because they want to single out the Rams. This is the way they make every winner in life, whether it is somebody that wins the Tour de France or somebody that wins the Super Bowl. The news departments now, ABC, ESPN, NBC, CBS, they are all going to go and find flaws. If they cannot find places where people have cheated, then they're going to go ahead and play up the luck angle and make it sound like the only reason that these folks were able to become champions is because they got lucky. It's along the lines of what Barack Obama said when he said, "You didn't build that. You didn't build that. You didn't make that. You didn't do that. You're no smarter than anybody else. You don't work harder than anyone else." Well, as a matter of fact, yes, I do. And that's the correct answer, by the way. If you get a lefty that comes to you and tells you those things, "Oh, you didn't do that. You didn't accomplish anything." Yes, I did. Don't allow them to intimidate you. You have to get in a fight or an argument, you just stand your ground. "Yes, I did. You have a nice day," and walk away. But it comes from the same place. The idea that the universe is a horrible, terrible, scary place where nothing can be known with certainty, and failure is to be expected. So the only way to explain success and successful people is that they must be cheating, getting lucky, or a combination of the two. And another reason that this is important is because this explains the left's hatred for the rich, going on and on about the rich and how the rich are ruining everything, and giving back. That's where the slogan "giving back" came from, is the idea that, well, hey, you are successful because you got lucky or because you cheated, so therefore you owe us. You owe everybody else. You owe the middle class. You owe poor people, so you need to give back. And the proper way to handle that is that if somebody asks you if you got lucky or if you're giving back, you say no. Especially if you're, let's say you're going to do a charity, something for charity. You're not giving back, you're making a donation. That's the proper way to handle that. So if anybody says, oh, you're giving back, no. I didn't steal anything. I didn't borrow anything. I don't need to give back. What I'm doing is making a donation, a charitable donation. That's the way to handle that. So when I come back, I'm going to be reading from the Ayn Rand lexicon, and after that, we'll see. Thank you very much. Welcome back. The Ayn Rand lexicon, where she has, it's like a glossary or a dictionary, and but she gets into the essences of various concepts and abstractions. Today's abstraction is entity. To exist is to be something, as distinguished from the nothing of non-existence. It is to be an entity of a specific nature made of specific attributes. The development of human cognition starts with the ability to perceive things, i.e. entities. Of man's 5 cognitive senses, only 2 provide him with a direct awareness of entities, sight and touch. The other 3 senses, hearing, taste, and smell, give him an awareness of some of an entity's attributes, or on the consequences produced by an entity. They tell him that something makes sounds, or something tastes sweet, or something smells fresh. But in order to perceive this something, he needs sight and or touch. The concept entity is implicitly the start of man's conceptual development and the building block of his entire conceptual structure. It is by perceiving entities that man perceives the universe. The first concepts man forms are concepts of entities, since entities are the only primary existence. Attributes cannot exist by themselves. They are merely the characteristics of entities. Motions are motions of entities. Relationships are relationships among entities. This term, entity, may be used in several senses. If you speak in the primary sense, entity has to be defined ostensibly, that is to say, by pointing. I can, however, give you these descriptive characteristics essential to the primary philosophic use of the term according to objectivism. This is not a definition because I'd have to rely ultimately on pointing to make these points clear, but will give you a certain criteria for the application of the term in the primary sense. An entity means a self-sufficient form of existence, as against a quality, an action, a relationship, etc., which are simply aspects of an entity that we separate out by specialized focus. An entity is a thing. 2. An entity in the primary sense is a solid thing with a definite boundary, as against a fluid, such as air. In the literal sense, air is not an entity. These are contexts, such as when the wind moves as one mass, when you call it that by analogy, but in the primary sense, fluids are not entities. 3, an entity is perceptual in scale, in size. In other words, it is a this, which you can point to and grasp by human perception. In an extended sense, you can call molecules, or the universe as a whole, entities, because they are self-sufficient things. But in the primary sense, when you say that entities are what is given in sense perception, we mean solid things which we can directly perceive. So she kind of contradicts herself right there, because the universe, considered in its totality, is imaginary, not real. And so it is the objects in the universe that are real, those things that can be measured and seen and touched and whatnot. So, but that was the concept, or actually the abstraction entity, and that is the abstraction of the day. So, back in a minute. And thank you very much. Welcome back. And I'm going to be reading now from Out of the Ashes, Rebuilding American Culture. Okay, because part of the show is the idea that it doesn't work where politics informs our culture and culture informs philosophy. It's the other direction. Philosophy shapes our culture. Culture shapes our politics. So, when we left this book, he was talking about lying, and the idea that if we're going to reclaim American culture, one of the things that we have to do is start telling the truth. That's the basic, the bedrock of culture, is either lying or telling the truth. And this part of the chapter is called, Are We a World of Liars? In a word, yes. It is almost impossible in the modern world not to accept lies as a matter of course. We are told that a woman can make as good a soldier as a man. Except for the rare Amazon, that is a lie. Americans are told by justices whose business it is to know the truth that the Constitution forbids capital punishment. It presumes that capital punishment will be exacted for certain kinds of crime. That the Constitution forbids prayer to open a public meeting. The drafters of the Constitution began their meetings with prayer. That the Constitution upholds the right of privacy in matters sexual. The Constitution does not mention privacy at all. The Constitution allows Congress to pass laws requiring individuals to make certain purchases for their own good. The drafters of the Constitution had a word for that sort of thing. It was tyranny. And so on. The justices know quite well that it is all an elaborate pretense. They know they are building falsehoods upon falsehoods. Justice Sandra Day O'Connor once admitted that the notorious Roe v. Wade decision legalizing abortion across the land was decided incorrectly. But she was loath to take back the lie. We had to continue to pretend that it really was a constitutionally illicit decision, even though it was not, because a generation of women had predicated their economic lives upon it. In other words, lies apparently shade into truth with age, or lies become truth when they come with the goods. Actually, they do no such thing. With age, the lies show themselves to be more hoary and monstrous than ever, and that is why you have to lie more flagrantly, to cover yourself for the lies you've already told and do not want to retract. Sin will pluck on sin, says Macbeth, deeper in evil than he had ever intended to be. The goods they seem to deliver come with hooks and barbs. I am a Roman Catholic. The essence of what I am to believe is contained in the Nicene Creed, which I can recite at a reflective pace in 1 minute. Our world today is far more demanding than the bishops at Nicaea were. I am to believe of a vast array of outlandish lies, and woe unto me if I do not bend the knee and kiss the liar's sandal. Family structure doesn't matter. Sex is biological, but gender is social. The feminist movement is about equal opportunities for women. The Indians were peace-loving people close to nature and benevolent to everyone. The world is now warmer than it has ever been. We're all going to fry like eggs on a skillet unless we cede control over all actions that use up energy, which is to say all human actions whatsoever, to a centralized world bureaucracy. Religion is the cause of almost all wars. 1 million people were burned at the stake in the Middle Ages. It isn't just the sheer multitude of the lies or their weight, like a mudslide rumbling down the side of a 2-mile-high volcano. It is that we really do not expect people to do anything but lie. As I write these words, Hillary Clinton, probably the most vulgar, insecure, vindictive, and malevolent human being ever to be nominated by a major party for the presidency, seems to have a better than even chance of winning the office. That is despite a long career of lying in the most outrageous and the pettiest ways. Perhaps the most stunningly inhuman lie came, for she has been lying for so long it is hard to attribute conscious agency to her, came, I say, on the morning after the murders of American diplomats in Benghazi, when she gave the mother of one of the murdered soldiers a straight look and assured her that a certain insignificant filmmaker in California, who she knew had nothing at all to do with the attack on the consulate, would be brought to justice. How you do that to someone who has just lost a child, I do not know. Her mendacity is not really in dispute. It isn't just the people who oppose her who say she lies. Her supporters know it well, too, and don't care, because they want the things that her lies are meant to secure for them. She is their liar. But the past century has been awash in lies. We err if we assume that things were always so. The spirit might have been willing enough, but the technology was weak. A town crier simply cannot spread lies continually and from one end of a nation to the other. Mass education, what Muggeridge called the great fraud and mumbo-jumbo of the age, can do it, as can mass media. It is what they are for, really. Muggeridge said that he was conscious of having been governed throughout his life by a long, miserable series of buffoons and liars. The joke in the old Soviet Union was that there was no pravda in Izvestia. And Pravda means truth, and Izvestia the news. And no Izvestia in Pravda. In other words, there's no truth in the news, no news in the truth. Is the New York Times much more honest? Walter Duranty, whom Muggeridge actually liked as a human being while calling him the most accomplished liar I have ever met, helped to bolster Stalin's image by reporting that, no, there was no starvation in the Ukraine and that the forced collectivization of farms was proceeding just fine. Was it 5 or 6 million people whom Stalin slew in the Ukraine? People were eating human corpses. It had gotten so bad. And what had been one of the richest areas in the world for growing of grain was turned into a wilderness of weeds, idle machinery, and death. Duranty won the Pulitzer Prize for his reporting, a prize the Pulitzer Board has never withdrawn. We now know from the confessions of one of the fabricators, Dr. Bernard Nathanson, and the boasts of another, Dr. Alan Guttmacher, that the statistics upon which the Supreme Court based its infamous decision on abortion were just made up. For example, that 1 million American women had died from illegal abortions. How far wrong was that statistic? It is like saying that 3 decades ago the Earth's temperature was 500 degrees, or that a human skeleton had been discovered in another Piltdown, measuring 100 feet in length. The lies have been amply documented. Has anyone other than the repentant Dr. Nathanson of blessed memory hung his head in shame and recanted? Or do any legal experts say, quote, it disgusts us to have to endure this decision based as it was on sheer mendacity, unquote? No, never. The lies are our lies. Harvey Milk was an openly homosexual politician in San Francisco, assassinated along with the mayor. His assassination had nothing to do with his sexual predilections. Mr. Milk was also a serial predator of teenage boys. That will get you a Hollywood movie and actual religious icons, featuring the man with a halo. They will name a street after you. They will produce daft picture books of Mr. Milk dressed and not tumescent for the consumption of little children in school. The lies are our lies. Do we any longer have a sense of honor? What does it mean when we make a solemn promise? I know of several abandoned spouses, wives or husbands of adulterers, who have lost custody of the children, possibly because being abandoned by a lying and cheating lout or whore has the tendency to make you angry, and anger does not play well in court. How is this possible unless we really no longer expect people to tell the truth and to abide by their promises? King Lear could cry out upon false judges who commit the very crimes for which they condemn others. We go further than that. We have judges who commit the very crimes for which they reward others. Here we encounter the weakling's objection. You can't judge others, says the weakling, crooking his finger or cocking his head knowingly like an intelligent retriever, because you don't know what you would do unless you were in the same situation. You don't know how trying it is. And then comes the list of unexpected evils and disappointments, and the dry handkerchief dabbing at the eyes. I make no boast about what I would or would not do. I insist instead, if I prove myself to be on the verge of breaking a solemn promise, that other men hold me to it, just as a corporal orders the recruit to remain at his station, and his buddies make sure he does. Nobody knows what the battlefield is like until the bullets fly and the grenades explode. That is precisely what vows are for. I promise to be true so long as it is convenient to me is not a promise at all. It is itself a lie, a mock promise. Am I being too harsh here? Let's ask ourselves a simple question. When was the last time you heard someone admit to a lie without legal compulsion and without making excuses or attempting to shift the blame onto someone else? When was the last time you heard of someone's conscience compelling him to come clean? When was the last time you heard someone say, I'm going to break a promise and break some hearts in doing so? Please pray for me because I will need it as I am entering with eyes wide open into the valley of the shadow of death. Naturally, I will resign from all my positions of public influence and trust. We must become tellers of the truth again, and people who are willing to hear truths too, especially when it hurts to hear them. So, very well put. And again, emphasizing the fact that you can see here where if we have a culture of lying, then what a surprise when we have politicians, if we lie to each other, that we're going to elect politicians who lie to us. The same thing that happens in a lot of places in the world, that countries that are corrupt. And that there's a huge corruption in certain countries precisely because it's a cultural value. It isn't just that the politicians are ripping off the people, it's that the people are ripping off each other. And they consider it just part of life. They shrug their shoulders and just keep going. There's a saying in Mexico, in Spanish, I can't repeat it in Spanish, but in English, it goes like this. If I see you before you see me, you're screwed. And what that means is that I'm going to rip you off. And that's the motto. This was actually told to me by a guy who said he heard this motto in the Mexican army, when he was in the Mexican army. That was the way things were. They would rip each other off. Another guy from Mexico was telling me how it is standard practice. Basically, everybody rips everybody else off. The government rips off the people, businesses rip off their employees, and the employees turn around and rip off the business. And I think that the guy was referring to it, he called it an enganche, a hook. But that it's common to go to work and you steal things, where it might be office supplies or maybe little pieces of whatever it is that they happen to produce. In his case, he worked for a bottled water company. I think it was Arrowhead. And so he would regularly take home cases of bottled water and that he had on his truck. He'd just steal one and take it home. And he says, it's no big deal. We do that kind of thing in Mexico all the time. And again, so it isn't the issue isn't corruption always. It's the tolerance of corruption. Okay, the difference between one country and another is very, very often, again, the question of, does that society, civilization, tolerate corruption? Not, is there corruption actually existing in it? In any case, this brings us to the conclusion of another episode of The Drill. And until next time, thank you very much for listening, and have a great day.